love to take a minute to sit in silence and just arrive. We actually are all coming out of an interesting retreat we did for the past few days, so I have an interesting energy right now. So I'd love to catch up with it. And you're invited to close your eyes and as I've been calling it recently, giving your body a read. What's happening where in your body? Where is there some energy? Where is there relaxation? And letting them both be there exactly where they are, in whatever combinations they're in. And I invite you to open your eyes. I actually, while we were doing that, realized I'm really excited to be here. And on the count of 3, let's all say, yeah. Ready? 1, 2, 3, yeah! Okay. Let's do this. So, this evening I'm going to talk about trust. I had an attendee of the circling retreat that we just finished ask me what I was going to talk about at the Sunday Sit tonight. And the conversation was something like, I said, trust. And they said, so are you an authority on trust? And I was like, I don't think so. I feel like I've been learning a lot about trust recently. And I feel like that's very accurate. And I just wanted to state that that's like where I'm at with this. And yeah, I actually preparing for this talk more and more has led to a lot of inner discussion, and I'm actually really excited for what could come up in the Q&A later. I'm really excited to hear people's thoughts on the subject. But I wanted to start off, with a story that it's a special story to me in the sense of like, feel like it's a part of my history of like how I got here in general and how I became a resident of the monastic academy. So some of you were here from my last talk I did here, I think that was in August. It was definitely a while ago, but I was talking a little bit about how, and I think I've talked with a few of you about how I used to live in Los Angeles. And I used to work on a lot of music projects there. I had a job in the music licensing industry during the day, and then I would go home and make music. And then I had a lot of projects with friends that I was working on when I lived there. And one project in particular was with my friend Hannah, and she's a fantastic vocalist. She would basically bring me lyrics that she would make into melodies, and I would write guitar parts to them, and then we would write songs with all of those, with like the different components that kind of were coming to the table with me and her. And so her dad, who's like a really just wise, humble, strong, like father-like figure to me. He was very supportive of her art and our project, and he ran a business. Actually, he still runs it, and he had an office that he wasn't using, and he said that we could use it to put my gear in, and we could make it a little studio. And I remember when we were hanging out and we were figuring out just logistically like some things about moving into it, and we came to the name. We were like, well, it needs a name. And there was actually no hesitation on my part. I immediately said, A Place Called Trust. That's what it's called. And I don't really know where that came from in that moment. Actually, let me rephrase that. In that moment, I didn't know where it came from. That's more accurate. But looking back, I see that still applies to the places that I want to go. And I actually really feel like it applies to our community up at Cedar. To me, that's like also a place called trust, in the sense of we're training each other and we're being trained to be trustworthy people, trustworthy leaders, trustworthy practitioners. And it's kind of a constant reminder that that's in my history, and that like I'm always actually looking for places like that because they're important to me. It's just funny. That place was in Beverly Hills and this is in Lowell, Vermont. It's a funny contrast. The other thing is APCT, A Place Called Trust, is not the acronym for a tree, unfortunately, so I don't think we could ever use it. But it's okay. So, yeah, in reflecting on my past few weeks, past few months, I guess, it's been interesting transitioning out of the holidays and into the new year. In December, we had our longest retreat of the year. For those of you that don't know, we have a meditation retreat for a week out of every month. And last December it was 2 weeks, and this December it was 11 days. And it was a difficult one. And a productive one. And I feel like what I really learned about in that retreat was how much I trust the practice and ways to cultivate trust for the practice, ways to accept what's happening when I'm practicing. And how all of that, like what I've been calling mini trusts, kind of add to the macro big picture trust, which I really intend on throwing myself into being with as much as possible, so that I can live fully and live my purpose on this planet as fully as possible. And coming out of that retreat was interesting. There were a few days we went back onto our responsibility schedule where we basically meditate, do chanting and meditation early in the morning, and then we have breakfast and then run our organization for 5 hours and then kind of go about our daily life at the Monastic Academy. And I had like 4 days on that schedule, and then I went home and I had a really fun drive home. I was sort of like applying things from the practice in my drive, which I've been trying to do every time every time I'm taking a long drive. I try to at least take parts of the practice and put it in my drive. But I had fun. There's something I do in my practice where I take the hindrance of sensual desire, and every time I'm like in meditation, I'm like, I want pizza, or like I want a donut, or like I want something. Just set that aside and keep going. And I actually was driving and I was gonna stop for pizza, and then I set aside the sensual desire and kept going. So that was really fun. And proved that the practice is working. So that was really like gratifying, I guess. And I got home and my parents were there, and my brother and his wife and their newborn baby was there, and she's absolutely precious. It was really enjoyable to be with them. And it's interesting with my family because I try to give them as clear of a picture as I possibly can about what I'm doing in terms of running the organization, but maybe I fall short a little bit. I'm not really sure. Probably a lot of the time when I talk to my parents, I'm like, yeah, I'm really tired and things are going well. That's probably a good amount of it. But I also, there's a lot more than that. I've been heading up resident recruitment, trying to get people to join the residency program, and getting guests in the door, and a lot of other stuff, getting logistical stuff done, making sure people are where they need to be at the right time, and make sure they're wearing brown shirts and whatnot. Yeah, I get a lot of questioning from my family as to why I'm doing what I'm doing. And in the end, it was difficult because I love and trust them. And I also, as it turns out, love and trust myself, which I didn't really know that much before going into this program, actually. And so it's confusing to be with that. It's like, who do I trust? How do I trust them? What do I trust? And then it always, I feel like these days it just leads back to, I need to trust what's happening right now. And this discomfort is part of something that is larger than me, that is trying to communicate to me that if I don't accept it and trust it as much as possible, then I will suffer. And I do continue to suffer, but I feel like I have a lot more perspective on it through the practice. And I would say leading off of that, I think it was on my drive back to Vermont from, I went down to the Philly area. That's where my family is. I was like, how did I get here in the first place? Like, why did I ever start meditating? Which is kind of fun to ask myself because I just totally forget to do that, just to like check in with like, whoa, what was that like timeline? What did that look like? How did I make this happen? And And I remembered something that I discovered in, I think it was like my first couple months of doing a daily meditation practice right after New Year's of 2015, actually. So it's basically been 2 years. And yeah, in those first 2 months of 2015, I discovered I had a disease, if you will, that I diagnosed myself. And I called it the PRE, the profound rejection of everything. Because I noticed that when I was in meditation, my tendency was to reject everything that was happening. As I was trying to follow my breath, that was my focus space at that time, just breathing in and breathing out, trying to stay with that as much as possible. And I remember vaguely from that time shutting a lot of things down. Like I'm actually sort of visualizing like a lot of like laptops, and I'm just closing them on. Like, no, I don't want to see what's on these, or like, no, I like want to ignore this and ignore that. And I actually, after that, I started to see how much I did that on the outside and how much I was actually doing that in my life, in my relationships, and at my workplace. And I actually knew from there I had to keep going on this journey that was telling me that I was rejecting everything because I didn't want to be doing that anymore. And there was like a sense of safety on that path. And a sense of like having no idea where that was going to take me. And yeah, I think now, just reflecting on it right now, there's a little less safety. There's still safety, but there's a lot less safety actually, and still a sense of I have no idea where I'm going. So that's interesting. And another thing that happened in the past few weeks that was inspiring for me actually, and something I'm grateful for and excited about in 2018. I got an offer to apply for a grant from the Center for Mindful Learning, actually. Sometimes Soryu makes an offer to one of the residents if basically on our retreats, I could basically put it like this: if the retreat goes really well for someone, then Soryu allows us to apply for this grant. So I applied for it for a project that I've wanted to do for basically 7 years. I've been writing songs for an album that I knew was going to happen, and I feel like I had a lot of this like backdrop faith and trust in kind of letting the pieces fall where they were falling, and the songs letting them get written when they were getting written, and really not trying to force anything out of myself in order to like make this project happen, and just kind of knowing like that it was actually happening. But I received some funding from Soryu, and I'm going to go record that in March. And I feel like moving forward in this year, I want to reflect on the process of making that and writing these songs. I feel like I let like a slow burning attitude with it, and kind of like just letting it happen as it was happening, and trusting that it was happening and knowing that it was happening. I feel like that, like I almost feel no resistance to doing this project or putting it out into the world, because I feel like it's a result of like the trust I had for the process of making it. And I feel like the more I look at that and the more I look at how my meditation practice is going, I feel like one can really reflect the other in a positive way. And I'm actually really curious to see like how, when I cultivate that kind of trust even more in my meditation practice, what my other creative projects could look like or sound like. And I went kind of fast. I do want to share one story from our circling retreat. There were a lot of...
What's circling?
Oh, what's circling? Well, I could call circling an interpersonal meditation practice where the focusing is on being with another person. It's on the other person. It's on me as a circly with the other person, and on our connection and what's coming up for me and for them. Like, what's alive for you, what's alive for me, what's alive in this connection. So it was our second circling retreat, and I feel like we had some nice momentum by yesterday in the evening. The people who had never done it before were getting a really great experience, and I think all the residents were excited about that and pleased with that. And so we separated into, there were like 20 of us, a little over 20, separated into like two groups of 10 or so. And I was in the group in the loft in our building, and there was a group under us, like around the fireplace, for those of you that have been in the building. And so I had the weirdest, most excited, like annoying energy going into the circle that I was going into, and I was very aware of it. I was actually very self-conscious with it. It was like, I think that's where the annoying was coming from, or that it had to do with. I was like, I wish I didn't have this energy, but like, this is gonna be great, and like, we're all like gonna circle and like whatever, just whatever. I can't even remember actually what a lot of the excitement was about. But I go upstairs, and the atmosphere. Who was there? You were there. You were there. He was there. You were downstairs, right? Yeah, you were downstairs. The energy was so subdued compared to where I was at that I was like, oh no, I'm never gonna survive. And I basically, what did I do? I think I was just curled up for a while. I was kind of like kind of waiting to. I was trying to find somewhere to jump in and connect with anything that was happening, but I was so uncomfortable that there was nothing to catch on to, that I was really just like, oh, like, please, like, give me something, for probably over 30 minutes, maybe more. I have no idea. And it's not like I wasn't enjoying what was happening amongst the group, but I just wasn't. Nothing was resonating with me. And I was trying to remember what I said, but somehow at some point I was just like, I'm bored. Or like, this isn't working for me. Or like, this is what? I kind of just jumped in and said something that was kind of like the opposite energy of what was happening. And the energy of the whole circle actually changed. People were like, okay, well, that just happened, so what's that? What do you want to say more about that, or do you want something else out of this? And shortly thereafter, I locked eyes with this one woman who had never circled before. And that's a big part of circling. Seeing the person in front of you and just staying there as long as that staying there is alive for you. And I had the intention, I feel like, from all that anxiety and like stuckness and excitedness before, to connect with the group or connect with someone in the group. Like, I knew deep down I wanted that. And it was interesting to see like how little trust I had when I was actually given that opportunity, and how much fear and anxiety came up when I was given that opportunity. I was like, whoa, like I don't know if this is safe. So it was like I was still in this pretzel thing formation. I was in a kind of different chair than this, but I was a little more like this, with some blankets, and not really comfortable, and like doing my best to stay connected to this woman. And she was talking about some pain that she was experiencing, and I was definitely curious and just trying to stay with it. And I think I calmed down like little by little. And I was like, okay, can I trust this? Can I trust what's happening? I think I can. And then Peter Park, who was facilitating the circle, encouraged me to sit a little closer to her. And I was like, that sounds great, but I'm horrified, so I don't know. Like, there's just a lot going on. And then I was like, all right, never mind. I'm just gonna do that. And I actually think my level of like acceptance of what was happening and my level of trust for her and for the group went up like when I just got up and moved closer, which was, I could feel my body calm down. And then actually, like, I adjusted my posture to be out of the pretzel and more like a lot more like this. And it felt more, things got like really unstuck in my body after that, actually. Upon reflection, I feel like kind of evened out the energy. The like stuckness was, I was definitely moving around a lot and trying to like get it all out, and I think I have some of it in me right now, but just kind of staying with what was happening as much as possible and using that trust that I was building up, and trying also to see like where my distrust was coming from and why it was present at the times that it was present, based off of the various things that were happening in the circle and the signs I was receiving from my circling partner at that point. And towards the end of the circle, I realized that I had so much energy from the beginning, from even before I had walked upstairs, that I just wanted to use to connect with those people, and I wanted it to be used productively and for good. And I slowly realized, I was just like, I actually think I want to sing to you. Like, that's actually really what I want. And then when I said that, I was like, oh, great, now I have to sing. Oh, that's not good. And then I was like stuck. It was like, okay.
You gotta sing now.
Yeah, well, you know. So the thing was, when I trusted that part of me that was like, actually, you just want to be here for this and like do that, and that's not a problem. And yes, there was a lot of stuff you had to like work through and around and like go through to get to this point, but you're actually totally safe. And that was like, I think that level of settled I was talking about when I adjusted my posture was like, I was like even more there. I was like even more able to stay with my partner visually, or I'm not gonna say partner, I would say stay with the other circle-y visually. And then I just started singing, and I just kind of forgot everything else had happened. And it was like a moment of trusting the process of what was happening so much that what was happening just like was good and nothing else mattered. And I want to see how we might be able to cultivate that tonight. I imagine a number of you have heard the teacher Shinzen Young say this, and I love when he says this, and I love to say it to myself. I invite you to stretch up and settle in. By that I mean, well, my interpretation of that is the very top of your head. Imagine there's a string that's pulling it up. Let it pull you up a little more. Okay. Release it. And settle into the chair. And some of you weren't here for the very beginning of the talk, but I invited the people who were here to give a read to their body and how they were feeling in their body, where the energy was in their body, where the relaxation was, and I invite you to do that now. And I want to explore how there are parts of our bodies that may not be as relaxed as they could be. And how we could relax those parts. And sometimes that's actually difficult to do, I've found. And sometimes there's tension in certain areas that stays there. And the absolute best I can do is recognize it, feel it, and be with it exactly as it is. And in that sense, there's an acceptance of it, and there's a trust that there's actually a reason that it's there. Before we go any further, I want to invite you to cultivate a posture that is energetic and relaxed simultaneously. Sometimes I find that I default to what I think is both of those at the same time. In other words, having a thought of, oh, that worked those 10 times I was sitting. It'll probably work now. And then being wrong and moving on. And throughout this, you can experiment with a posture that is in an overall whole sense relaxed and energetic at the same time. If you feel like you're missing one of those, the relaxed part or the energetic part, the stretching up and settling in has actually helped me quite a bit So feel free to try that again if you feel you're a little off balance at any time. So I invite you to do a free-form scan of your body. That means recognizing how you're feeling and the different parts of your body that are calling your attention to them. Maybe your attention is jumping around quickly. Maybe it's kind of slowly making its way around, up and down, side to side. Maybe there's not a lot of feeling that you can feel right now, and that's okay too. But see if you can, in this exploration, whatever is happening, A, not reject it, B, accept it as much as you can and trust that it's there for a reason. When you come upon a part of your body that's holding tension, you can feel that tension and you can release that tension also. For me, lately, I've been having a lot of tension in my jaw and in my chin. And when I just drop my chin just a little bit, there's a lot of relief. Where is your attention pulling you in your body, and how does it feel there? Can we trust that that feeling is there for a reason? And can we trust that feeling? if you want, you can label your feelings that you're having. For instance, my hands have an aliveness in them right now, like a pulsating, sort of like the snow in a snow globe swirling around energy. And as I'm feeling that in the hands, I could label that with feeling, feeling, feel, feel, feel. Some of that in my elbows and my shoulders as well right now. Feeling, feeling, feeling. You can use the word feeling or the word feel. The other word you could use is trust. Trust this feeling. Trust this. Trust. Trust what's happening. Trusting this and this. Trust. And of course, if you're not sure if you actually trust it, then that's really okay. You can continue to use the word feel or not use a label at all. So in a minute, I'm gonna ring the bell. I invite you to take a little walk around, move around if you need to. Stretch. I also want to ask that, considering the space and considering the people that are practicing in the room tonight, where they may or may not be moving, I ask that you authentically express any energy that you might be feeling in your body that you want to express. Whether that's shaking out your hands or maybe moving your legs around a little quickly. Waving your arms around a little bit. Swaying from side to side. Like I said, just be mindful of the space and the people around you. And we'll have about 5 minutes. Hmm. All right. Good job. I don't know about you, but I feel a little... feel like I got a little loosened up through that. I hope it did something like that for you. And for the first minute or two back in our chairs, I want you to... rather, I invite you to feel how your body is responding to any movement or stillness that you just did with those 5 minutes. Perhaps you feel basically the same. Maybe some stuck energy has shifted. Maybe you're feeling more relaxed or more energetic. In any case, as much as you are able to this evening, accept what's happening in your body. And trust that feeling, those feelings, as much as you can. I know how easy it is to feel a feeling in my body that I don't like and say, this really sucks. I don't want this and I reject it. I've found that things like the breath and bodily sensations can flow a little more freely if I accept that they're there. And every time your attention is grabbed by something that's not a bodily sensation, gently bring yourself back to whatever's happening in your body. How can we accept what's there? Miles reminded me this weekend in one of his guided meditations how we're at the mercy of gravity in this practice. Actively falling. Can we trust this falling? And trust what it's showing us. For this last part of our practice this evening, there's going to be some sounds happening in the room. Taking us out of the space of what has been silence, besides my voice and the heater and the clicks and clacks of our joints and bones and whatever else we may have been hearing. See how you can receive it on a physical level, in the sense of how does it make your body feel when you hear the sound? So, I'd love to hear questions, comments, advice on how to trust things more. That's a half joke.
Don't joke at all.
Well, I can comment because I may be totally off base, but as I listened to your story, I was really struck by when you talked about naming the studio Trust, that came from a place, I have a real sense of safety and perhaps that was the music, you know, that you have that talent, you were secure in that, you had plenty of support, it sounded like, and it was perhaps natural that trust would come out of that feeling of safety and security. And then when you talked about the retreat and going into the circling, it's felt to me like there was a lot of, oh, am I going to be good at this? Am I going to do it right?
Mm-hmm.
Not that you said that, but that's just the kind of feeling I got. And so it made me think that there's always that little element of fear before you can step into the trust,
Mm-hmm.
especially in a new situation.
Yeah. You said especially in a new situation.
In a new situation, unfamiliar, where you might not feel that safety net around you.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm reflecting on like how safe I felt in like places where I was making music with people. How safe I feel like, for instance, me and Dan play guitar together. Like how safe I feel being like, I don't want to play this one anymore, or like I don't want to keep playing this, or like can we play this song and I'll sing, or like if how I'll receive, like if I'm playing drums with a friend that I'm thinking of who I wrote some songs with, like how I did receive and how maybe I would receive now, like if I was playing a part to a song that I thought might be right on the drums and he's a guitarist, if he was like, that's not it. It's interesting because like I feel like there's like an intricacy in creating something together. And in a way it's like music is you're creating something together that's like, I think, tangible in a way that like this practice isn't tangible in some way. Or maybe I tell myself that. In circling, it's like creating something together that you don't know what it's going to be. It feels it. I used to do improv comedy, like improv acting in high school, and like it feels more and more like that. Like we just have no idea where this is going. But it's a safe place, safe container to do that kind of work and like find out how much I am trusting of that safety and that container and the people, how much I'm not trusting. Yeah, it's been wild to see like how many things I found I actually could have said to people I was working on music with, just being like A, living at the monastery, and B, circling. I feel like there's an honesty that can be cultivated definitely in meditation practice, and definitely in circling, that bringing it into a creative process there could be a lot there. Like the result of making songs with some of the people I've made songs with after like that kind of deep connecting could be really wild. And yeah, I think in both it's a matter of trust. It's like, do I trust this person to receive this, and do I allow myself to receive what they're going to give back to me? Or resist it, reject it. And what's that like when I do that?
It's kind of a fundamental issue in any relationship, actually.
Yeah.
I was imagining in your story about the studio that you mentioned Hannah's dad being a solid guy,
Mm-hmm.
and I was imagining that trust came from his trusting you.
Mm-hmm.
A couple of young people, he's got this nice space, and he has faith in you, and that must have felt kind of nice. It was a nice opportunity, and so I was imagining that. And in the circling, we were talking about the circling. When you reconvene, you were split up, and you reconvene. I was imagining if it was me and I had done circling with people, and then there was new people coming in, I'd have like an expectation, and it would be hard to let go of that. I want it to be great, you know. I want it to be really special for the people that were new,
Mm.
and it would be hard for me to let go of that, and that there may have been a little bit of that, you know, in your boredom. You just didn't quite know how to, you know, let go of it. So, which is hard to do, you know,
Mm-hmm.
I think. But trusting that things are gonna go, I have a hard time trusting that things are gonna go all right without my added flavor or whatever, you know, whatever the situation is, you know. My wife could be opening a jar of peanut butter, and I would say, no, you're gonna do it this way. So trust is I think it's something that really, I think that for myself, I've worked on it for years and years and years, and it's one of those things that I don't think you ever really fully resolve or need to stop working on. Unless I suppose you're fully awake. Which I'll never be.
Don't say that.
Yeah, alright. I won't say that. I loved your singing, by the way, too. It was really, really resonated, lovely resonance. I really loved it. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot. Yeah. It's funny when you were talking about the peanut butter jar. It's so funny. The first thing that comes to mind is Sawyer's allergic to peanut butter. Don't bring it to. Literally the first thing that comes to mind. Then the next thing that came to mind was because it was sort of like you were illustrating an exchange where it was like, no, do it like this. It reminded me of like how people that I love and trust are like seeing me doing what I'm doing, and they're like, no, do it like this, do something else. the like this is something else. And the kind of like how do I say it? It's like a fluctuating but like jagged trust that it just feels different. If there's like there's all these like divots in it, kind of, you know. It's like, oh wait, but like I thought I was doing the right thing for myself and the world, and what? And yeah, I mean, but I think that like in that like small example of the jar, it's like I imagine it's something like you want to be able to trust her to do it right, and she wants to be able to trust you to let her do it the way she's doing it. And I feel like it's the same with the people in my life that don't really understand and don't trust this process that is happening for me right now. And in the end, like especially with the talking with my parents about it a lot over the break, I felt this tension from the like, I'm trying to get you to see it this way, you're trying to get me to see it this way, and I don't think either of us are actually gonna see it either way. And that's actually like, if I can just accept that, if I can accept that like we're not gonna agree on this, and like that we still love each other, then like that is, I can totally trust that actually. And it definitely took me like coming back up to Vermont and talking with them a little more, like processing with them a little more when I got back. And it was like, you know what? This is just what's happening right now. And it's like, I feel like I can make it a problem for myself. Like it can feel like a problem if I make it feel like a problem. Yeah.
I liked your talk on trust. And I found myself asking myself if I could trust, waiting for you to sing after you brought it up. And Tony mentioned, oh, you're going to sing. And I thought, come on, sing. And then I had to just say, well, can you just let it go and trust? I did wait, and it was lovely too. There was something else. You're very visual in your expressions, your eyes and your face, and you look down and you look up. And when you look up, there's this kind of angelic, open creativeness. And when you look down, there's really mental, deep machination going on there. And I don't know, it's interesting. I don't know what happens inside you when you look up or look down, but it's really fascinating to observe that. And then the other thing was, I love the way you tied it into what Sawyer did last week. The life purpose, the vow, and then the three things. Your action will help you or hurt you, or you know, if you do
do nothing, it will help you or hurt you, or if you react, it will help you or hurt you. So you have this question about trust. You can apply it to trust. Can I trust you to be yourself and be okay and still be able to coexist? Or do I need to take over and protect everybody from you? So there's always that.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it resonated with a lot of that. Well, I actually, when you were talking about the looking up and looking down, I remember like many times in the talk, like looking up a lot and then looking down a lot. And I was like, while I was doing that, I was like, what is that saying?
Yeah.
Really curious about that now. Yeah.
You get somebody to take a video of you or something, and a totally different face.
Huh. Yeah. Wow. Huh.
I also am very grateful that you sang, and it was, you were saying, noticing what the sounds made me feel, and I almost felt like I do when I listen to a recording of the sound of a whale. I mean, kind of this reverence and this joy and this freedom that I felt in your song. It was really transcendent. So I thank you for sharing. And in terms of trust, I find that like 95% of what goes through my mind is like junk. So
You and me both.
so it's not that I don't trust it, but now in my practice I try to notice it and just let it go. And then there are things, I guess it's untrustworthy. I guess it really is untrustworthy. But then there's other things, insights and more things that are tied to my body that I really do trust. And I've recently come to think that there really are two emotions that I feel, with a gradient in between, and one is love and one is fear. And so it's pretty simple, I can assess in the moment, is it love, is it fear, and I can decide which one it is, and then experience it and sort of process it. Of course I like love more than fear, and I try to accept both. And there's both of those feelings in the body, love and fear. And I always trust the love. I don't always trust the fear because in a lot of cases it's not, like there's no foundation for it. It's just sort of made up. But it seems like love is never made up. There's always a great essence to it. So that's what I'm sort of, in terms of trust, what I'm working with right now is, now that I've discovered that I have these two really foundational sort of feelings in my mind and in my body, where do I go with that in terms of trust?
Yeah. I can familiarize with that. Like, I think my main takeaway from my experience of circling last night, I just walked away from it being like, okay, trust is not fear or doubt. Got it. That makes so much more sense now. God, it took a long time. But like, I feel like there are parts of me that like they're like inspired by my fear.
Yeah.
And then when I look at those parts enough, it's like I do my best, and I feel like I'm getting better at like just being as nice to them as possible. While being like, but also all of this is coming from a place that's holding me back in every single way.
Right.
And if I keep letting them hold me back, like what's gonna happen? Like life is probably not gonna be that fulfilling. That's my conclusion every single time.
Yeah.
And I actually feel like that answer like comes from a trustworthy place of love.
Yes. Yeah. I get it.
Yeah. It's a tricky balance though. Yeah.
I hate to create the duality, but it seems as if it's there. And then underneath the fear is really a level of perhaps, maybe perhaps underneath the fear is a level of love and concern for whatever it is. Like I was walking my dog and it was -16 and she took off and I couldn't find her for a few minutes, and she does that regularly. She runs through the woods and she runs into something, and so I just had this terrible fear that maybe this time, the first time in 6 years, she really won't come back, and it's really cold and she'll freeze to death. And so underneath that fear, it was completely unfounded. In a few minutes, I called her, she came back, but underneath that fear is a love and concern. So maybe there's love and concern under everything, if I could just dig down to that
Mm-hmm.
and find it. And that seems to be a trustworthy endeavor.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that reminded me of like the things that are out of my control. Like in the things that are outside of me, like for instance, like for some reason, like your dog running away reminded me of like how my music will be received or something like that.
Yes, exactly.
You know?
So, yeah.
And like that does come from a place of like love and like wanting to be loved and like wanting people to feel connected when they hear the music, and like a lot of stuff like that feel connected, will have some sort of connection with what they're listening to and with me. But it's also like, well, if I can't control that, then I can't control that. And like that, I feel like, yeah, totally. It's like, does come from a trustworthy place, but still like whatever is going to happen in this process is going to happen. And I'm happy your dog came back though.
Yeah.
And it would be great if people liked my songs, but like totally up to the universe, like,
Right.
so yeah.
But you would never regret singing your song, would you?
Yeah, that's a great question. In the end, like I never do. And I feel like there's fear that holds me back from sharing.
It's almost as if you have to betray those people and go ahead and sing your song.
Yeah, totally. I have to like uproot the, like, feel like it's like the little me's like holding my legs down. They're like, no, don't go. Like, you can't go. Like, don't go to the show, like, and I'm like, no, like, ugh. And
I'm reading it.
yeah, then I have to go to the show. Yeah, and honestly, like that's how I've played a lot of shows with those men, like, ow, and I'm like, get off, like just stuck with that, like, inhibition, the like reservation of like, is this the right show? Like whatever, like so many like, kind of like, it's almost like curiosity's gone astray, or just like assumptions about how things are going, and like fear of how it sounds and whatever. So yeah, it's like kind of like I was saying earlier in response to your question, that just the intricacies of like creating something that people are in the room with, there is that like pre all of it fear and reservation that I have to be like, yeah, but why? Like, why is it? Why do I have to come from there tonight? I don't have to, you know.
It does sound like a good comedy routine.
Welcome to my life. Yeah. We're pretty much out of time, but if anyone has anything burning.
I just enjoyed seeing your face with the irrepressible smile.
Thanks. All right. Can't take the smile off my face now. Thanks, Jennifer.
It's the kind of thing you can put trust in.
Totally. I trust that.